Support for Donnybrook is provided in part by Design Air Heating and Cooling.
Seems fair to me.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Thank you for joining us for Donnybrook. You know, at the end of last week's show, the topics started emerging, and we said, man, we already have a lot of topics for this Thursday. And we do. And we're going to get into them in just a moment. But first, let's meet the panelists, starting with the media veteran herself, Wendy Wiese. From the Post-Dispatch, one of our founders, Bill McClellan. Also from the Post and STLtoday.com, Joe Holleman. And from the St. Louis American, we welcome, as always, Alvin Reid. We're starting with you, Wendy. We just found, I don't think we had been 5 minutes.
Walked across the parking lot.
Walked across the parking lot of last week when we read that the Tourism Commission, actually Sam Page, the county executive for St. Louis County, decided to appoint the former CEO of Explore St. Louis, the tourism group as it was then known, to the St. Louis Tourism Commission, along with former lawmaker and county councilman Rochelle Walton Gray. But what really had people scratching their heads was just a couple of years ago, there was like a $500,000 buyout for Ms. Ratcliffe, and she got a car
allowance,
and she left this organization, which kind of jettisoned her, and now she'll be making policy, kind of overseeing the new guy who took her place, Brad Dean. I don't think that's too fair to him, do you?
I just kind of think of it as, I think of it as just, because I really did, and I admitted this a little bit earlier to you all, that I thought it was an onion. I did think it was an onion story. Because I think that Sam Page is, obviously we have established the fact he's an anesthesiologist, so he's a lot smarter than probably anybody at this table in terms of academics.
Sure.
Okay.
That's another topic.
That's another topic for another time. However, he's not going to have a press conference, like an NFL-style press conference where he, lets people have it. I think these little breadcrumbs are going to be dropping from now until he officially leaves office. I really do. Because she was replaced, and we had talked about Kitty Ratcliffe in that position for years, as I recall. Projects were, they ran so far over budget. There were all sorts of problems. And then to see that she was getting a $500,000, that raised enough eyebrows. But for Sam Page to say that she brings all of this experience when she was, as you say, jettisoned for not doing the job effectively, I think that's his sort of way of saying, you ain't seen nothing yet, folks.
Well, I kind of like it. It's like, when the president is leaving office and everybody gets pardoned and whatnot, you say, what is that all about? Well, this is Sam Page saying, like, you know what, now I'm going to appoint Kitty, but I'm a
Rochelle
Walton Gray. I'm just doing it to just irritate people, which I definitely understand.
Why would you understand that?
Well, because
that's horrific.
No, it's not. I get it.
Human nature.
I get it. That's human nature. And by the way, there's nothing to say that they can't do the job that they're being asked to do. But it was not. It's not coincidence. It's not coincidence that he picked these two people.
I wonder about the motivation of Kitty Ratcliffe. I mean, they bounced her out of the job, and
I think you just answered your own question.
Non-compensatory.
Right.
You don't get paid for it. Why in the world would she even want to do that?
You answered
I'm
your
with
own
Alvin
question.
here. I don't see why you guys are having such a hard time figuring this out. I'm Sam Page. There's nothing you can do to me. I don't have to ask the voters anymore. So I can pay off a political favor because the Walton family has always supported Sam Page. So that takes care of that. And boy, this will get some people's goat.
And
I'll
she-
put Kitty
but- and
Ratcliffe
she knows
on
how
there.
to
Well,
do the
why does
job.
she want to come on?
No,
Joe?
Because then now she gets
Now
to
she
lord
gets to-
over the
now
guy
she
that
gets
took her
to do
place.
that.
It's so unfair to the new guy. Who knows?
Agreed.
And he may be leaving now, thanks to Sam Page, because who wants to work for your former boss? I mean, that makes no sense.
Well, she's only
But
one vote.
I
Yeah.
think what happened here is that, since she left, the Regional Sports Authority and Explore St. Louis merged. And it was done by people like Steve O'Loughlin, who was the chair of the Tourism Commission, with the governor, Mike Kehoe, and Brad Dean, and they didn't include Sam Page. And I think he's just upset that he wasn't included.
So you're saying it's kind of petty revenge.
Yes,
okay.
but what we need is to boost tourism and put people who know tourism. Now, maybe
Kitty knows it.
well, she wasn't filling rooms. That's why we jettisoned her.
I
Well,
just
Rochelle
made that
Walton Gray
point.
has no experience that I know of
Well,
in
wait a minute.
tourism.
But now, Charlie, if you go back over the last 20, 30 years of the people who've been on that board, you could say that probably about half of the people that have been on that tourism board.
And I thought the question was, why would he do it? Or what it is, is it a bad move? It
Yes.
absolutely is.
Yes.
A bad. Nobody's disagreeing with that. What you asked is, why did he do it?
Right.
To be petty.
Right. And then,
But
then
why would someone? I mean, why would a person with any class take that job?
This-
as Kitty
that-
did?
that's-
why would
that-
anyone with any class do
No,
what this guy, the executive did?
it's not
I
a matter of
perfectly
class.
understand
It's
that.
total class.
No,
and the
it's
lack
not.
thereof.
You're not getting paid to do it.
No,
so.
that's
Right.
No, it's not about the money. It's not about anything. It's like what I always say, like you cannot throw enough change and throw in the Mississippi River for people from St. Louis. They always will bubble up, and the first chance they get, they said, you thought I was done.
I am
didn't
sorry to
you?"
hear
right.
that.
I'm
But it
sorry.
might be true. Bill, I want to ask you, speaking of money, and St. Louis, the mayor and others are trying to get a new airport director because Rhonda Hamna-Brugge, the current one, actually, she just retired. So we have an interim. And there's going to be like a $3 billion renovation of Lambert Field. So they need someone who's really outstanding. And in the contract, in the request for proposals to try and hire people, the city has said that the salary will be between $400,000 and $650,000 a year. Well, it is 2026. That's an important job. Isn't that worth it?
Well, I don't know what the marketplace is for these people, but we have a tendency to overpay people they're bringing in. Like with the police chief, John Hayden, the old chief, was making like 160. So we bring in a new chief, pay him 283. And now for the airport director, the old one was making 300 grand, and the newspaper story said that we're no shortage of applicants, qualified applicants. Well, I would think that you start out with the old person's salary and say, who can we get for 300 grand? And if you don't have anybody you like, maybe you raise it up. But this idea that we're going to pay them right up the get-go a lot more, I don't think it's smart.
But we have to distinguish the fact that Chief Tracy, that $100,000 of the 280 that you spoke of was sort of part of a package with the security deal, correct?
Right, and somebody else was paying that, so they.
Well, but it was
it
part
was-
of the deal. We
right,
didn't give it to
exactly,
John Hayden.
Exactly.
Well,
no,
no,
exactly.
No, wait a minute. If I remember correctly, he took the job, and then
then
that money came along. So he signed to be the chief of police in St. Louis for whatever that amount of money was, $183,000. I think when you hire a new baseball manager, football coach, they're coming in with the expectation they're going to make more than the person that they're replacing. Now, how much more, I don't know. If they thought that they could get the airport director from, JFK or LaGuardia, but that person wanted $650,000, then maybe that's what you pay them. I'm not saying that whoever you bring in should make that much, but that window between $400 and $650 doesn't mean that you have to pay this person $650. So I don't have a problem with jumping from whatever it was to $400.
I did check the salaries of the Pittsburgh airport director and the Baltimore, and one is making about $300,000, the other's making $600,000.
And which was which?
I
I'd be interested.
think Baltimore was $300. I think Pittsburgh was higher.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe jumping to 600 I thought was a little exorbitant. I can see moving it up to 450,000 or whatever.
I'm gonna say that's what I'm saying.
The thing I actually did like about it was no longer tying it to the term of a mayor.
Agreed.
I thought
I
that
agree.
was the best
Yeah, that's
part of
fine.
the bill
Yeah.
because that would, to me, be something that if I'm living in another city it's like, okay, this mayor's only has 2.5 years left.
That's right.
What if they lose
But-
and I got to go? I would want to be able to sign a 5-year contract regardless of who is the mayor.
Joe, what if you get another Keisha Scarlett or Millicent Borshade and you want to get rid of that person?
Well, but now, okay,
Well,
that's
so-
just one of those things that you can't. Once again, not to
What do
make
you
another
mean?
sports analogy, but if you hire a bad coach, it isn't like they're going to come for a 1-year contract or they're going to come
I
for less
understand
money.
that, but what happens if the person you hire comes and everyone's saying, oh, this is the best thing since sliced bread, this guy really knows airports, and then it doesn't work out?
Well,
How do you get rid of him if you give him a guaranteed
There's
deal?
probably a buyout in a contract.
Yeah,
I mean,
you-
nobody
you
writes
fire
a
'em
contract.
and you live with
fire
it.
them and you live with it and you go to court. But I mean, first of all, do a better job hiring than the St. Louis School Board did.
Well,
that
that
would be
was-
step number one.
Well, that would be
no,
nice.
these are national searches, and you get people who interview well.
Right.
And sometimes then they come here and they don't work out.
Okay, I'm just
That's
as
true.
one person that worked at different places, not in St. Louis. I always say, like, before I throw that stone, say, like, what if they said, like, well, you're just hiring people that interview well? So, like, no, I was pretty damn good at what I did. So, I mean, that's how I got different jobs. So
My first thought was Rhonda Hamnabrugge, for that window to expand by potentially $250,000. I would be a little.
But I'm not saying.
I'd be a little reflective.
No, you have to get that 650. You have to like have turn,
Like Heathrow.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's also, I just think there's a tendency in America to pay the top person too much and the workers not enough.
Well, I'm not going to.
I'll give you that. I'll grant out there.
And Rhonda, who I thought did a pretty good job.
She did.
She was
Lufthansa.
local, right? And then before her, I think it was Dick Rabko, and he was pretty good too. He was an interim
I thought
airport director.
Was
didn't
he? I
Rhonda
thought he
come from-
was
he had started
Spirit.
St. Louis.
He
He
was
was
Spirit.
St.
Dick
Louis
Rabko
first,
was
yeah.
I
Spirit.
thought Rhonda came from someplace else too.
She was American Airlines, was she not?
Yeah, but was she in
But
Dallas?
she was. I think she was
I
from Missouri.
Oh, okay.
I thought she
Like
Well, we knew her.
originally
She-
from
yeah,
Missouri,
we
but
knew.
she had other.
Well, Joe, before we get to our next topic, I know one of our most loyal viewers needs a good shout out, and she's Ginny Schrappen.
Bill and I work with Colleen Schrappen, a writer at our paper, and her mother, Ginny Schrappen, is a huge fan of the show. She's always at the Donnie Bashes, and she's having a few health challenges right now. So I just wanted to let you know that everybody here is sending out prayers and positive vibes your way, and hope to see you at the next Donnie Bash.
Here.
Absolutely.
Hey, it was in mid-July that you reported that Lisa Clancy, a member of the St. Louis County Council, was caught by a St. Louis County detective lifting a Brian Williams sign from the middle of the median on Wydown Boulevard. And I'll tell you what, the police report that was written up is the most thorough police report I have ever seen in my life. It was, he crossed the T's and dotted the I's, named Persich, the detective. So he gets this... He gets this police report in mid-July, finding that the county council member was acting inappropriately and maybe illegally. You report this week that since then, nothing has happened.
And I shouldn't be surprised, but I always get surprised that my first gut feeling is nobody wants to handle this case. I'll give credit to the police officer for investigating the case, doing it, doing their job, But I can imagine nobody wants to take it to the prosecutors. The person's, especially if you're a county police or you're a county prosecutor, the council's the one that decides what your budget is. So nobody wants to get them mad. Then it got into where the county police department said, well, we referred it to the Clayton Police Department. Then Clayton kind of got a little up in arms and said, hey, wait a minute. They don't have the power to refer cases to us. Clayton didn't want anything to do with it. So basically, as I said, was not only the sign disappear, the case seems to be disappearing as well. I've reached out to Ms. Clancy both right immediately after the incident and then when I wrote this last one, and she has declined comment.
Well, the prosecutor in St. Louis County, do they have a tisk kind of like, not law, but like, Lisa, you need to come into my office. We need to talk about this. And could you suggest that, like, you need to like apologize and maybe this will go away, but you gotta some signal of remorse so I don't follow up on this. No one is beyond the law, but I'm not saying that, lock her up. But at the same time, it shouldn't just disappear. And if I'm Dennis Hancock, this is the kind of thing that I run
I think
on.
Jake Zimmerman should pardon her. I mean, she was a supporter of Jake Zimmerman, and she was taking the sign of his chief rival out. And I think Zimmerman should say, as part of my campaign, I'm pardoning Lisa Clancy.
But this is genuinely what I don't understand. Whether it's social media or removing political signs from a cul-de-sac, if you are in the public eye, you have to pretend like there is a camera on you or eyes on you at all times. This wasn't a PTA cookie thing. I mean, it wasn't like this is a high stakes. If you are the county government and she's a council member and she's pulling, that just is such an awful look.
But she's playing the right cards because no one's doing anything. In the city of Clayton, I think Lieutenant Corporal Jenny Schwartz told you that,
yes, she did.
We're not going to be issuing warrants on someone else's investigation because then the prosecutor will ask us for questions and what can we tell them? We didn't investigate it. So the prosecutor in Clayton is Craig Smith of Curtis Hines, a law firm that represents a lot of cities. It could be in his hands or Melissa Price Smith.
Yeah, yes, yeah. All those things.
All of the above.
We just got to figure out where what police department is going to take paperwork to whom.
Well, somebody needs to take it. Something should be done. And also, there is a 6-foot by 8-foot Brian Williams sign on a lot right there on Kirkwood Road, almost in the middle of Kirkwood. Now, I would like to go just, and it's reinforced. I want to bulldoze. Right. But I don't even know if that's legal. Right.
But isn't that the point that Sarah was making?
Yeah.
That usually we're screaming for people to remove these political signs, just not at that particular time.
It's after the election.
Right.
Before the election, felony.
Exactly.
Well, I will
Lock
say,
her up.
Apologize. See, you've gone from an apology to lock her up.
After we discussed this last time, I said that if she's in the mood to pick up things off the street, she should take on Hanley Road near 6440 because there's so much litter. And as self-appointed watchdog Tom Sullivan pointed out, about 3 days later, it was cleaned up. So I don't know who did it, but thank you very much. Alvin, I want to ask you about the St. Louis Public Schools. About 1 year ago, we were talking about this Cordigan report where a company got $7 million to examine the future of the St. Louis Public Schools. There are 68 buildings right now. They said about 37 of them should be closed. We'd be down to 31. Then the number went down to we'll close 20, not 37. And now this week, they decide we're thinking of closing 14 of the 68. Well, let me ask you this. Some members of the Board of Education said that they think that this is unfairly affecting African American communities because the schools where many African American children are studying are on the closing list. Do you buy it?
Well, I do, because anytime you put together a list like that and a certain area, no matter where it be, seem like it's targeted for the closings. Well, this is North St. Louis. So I would see where the council board members would have a problem with this. I kind of do too. Now, it's easy for me to try to alleviate the situation. I would have to sit down and see how many students and where would they go and all that. But I think a little bit more, I think they're putting a little bit too much faith in the people that are putting together these plans, because why are they like, oh, this is unfair, I've never seen it, blah, 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 blah. You don't review these things before you actually have the board meeting? That's the part that I don't get, because I don't think you're violating any closed meeting statute. It's just like everybody's like, this is the first I've heard of this. And that's what's surprising to me.
On the surface, it seems like they just didn't go far enough. They have a real crisis and they've got to close some schools, and it's sad to see any schools close, but to come up with, well, we've decided to only close a few, it seems like this isn't really going to fix things anyway.
St. Louis has 68 schools, as I mentioned, and it's like the 6th largest school district, and all the larger school districts have about half the number of schools.
I agree.
It just has way too many schools, and Ness Sandoval has pointed out that between 2000, he's a demographer at SLU, between 2020 and 2024, the black population loss in the city of St. Louis by percentage was greater than all but one other American city. African Americans are fleeing St. Louis, and he didn't even count the tornado victims, which is probably another 2,000 families.
But why did it take this long for them to come up with these arguments about this report?
I mean, that's the question. I don't have an answer to that.
Because it seems like as you said, a year or so ago, the initial report was released, maybe they were kind of waylaid by the tornado.
Well, the first report came out, and the second of the superintendents to get fired was still the superintendent.
Oh, this is the school board. Don't forget. I understand. They had one school board member who had moved to California, and the school board didn't even know till 5 months later.
Yeah,
what was his name? Vowel? I forget her first name. I mean, they may not be on top of a lot of things.
Well, I mean, I guess where my whole look at this is yes, I agree, and I, to an extent, sympathize with the board member Robert Harvey, who said he was worried that it impacted more on black students. Also, part of that is just the odds. 75% of the students are black, so any change you make in that system is going to have more impact on more black students than white students because there are more, okay? It's like, what wins more horse races? Black horses or white horses? Black horses, because there's more black horses running in races.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. White horses are very rare, so that's the thing.
They're gray, actually.
Yeah, it's gray.
But part of his problem was that the gifted schools, which there's a higher percentage of white kids in, were more or less left untouched.
Right, and that's I think where the problem comes in, and where where his argument is valid. What I fear, though, is we started with people who have no connection. Say you can cut, let's say, half the schools, 30 something it was, really more than half. Then it comes down, we're going to cut 20. Then there's a little complaints, and now it's down to 14.
Yeah.
Now there's going to be a little more complaints, and are we going to end up back in the same place with a number of school buildings that shouldn't be open, still being open, draining the resources? Nobody's going to like this. I think it is unpleasant. Nobody likes to see schools close, but it's sometimes you have to count on your city councils, your county boards, your school boards to go, yeah, this is what we have to do.
When the student population has gone from 115,000 in the 1960s to 16,000 today. I mean, you're going to have to close schools.
Right. Well, you got to answer the transportation question too, and that's
expensive.
That's also a question that I don't think they've really overcome at SLPS yet. So you close a bunch of schools, that means kids are going to have to go a little bit farther. How are they going to get there?
I'm going to go to you two topics in a row, Alvin, because you are Mr. Kirkwood, and Kirkwood is in the news. The paper that Bill and Joe work for pointed out that the city of Kirkwood took $22 million over the last 10 years from its electric utility. And they filled potholes, they paved roads, they had some money went to the parks. The Performing Arts Center, which I think is a gem, was also paid for that. I don't find huge problems with draining money out of a utility if the utility rates were among the lowest in the state, and they were, and if these are needed repairs, like potholes and streets.
Well, Kirkwood is not unusual in that fact. A lot of municipalities across the country do that. You have like some cash cow, either the electric department or the water department, or you have like sports
airport
or sports facilities. That money gets moved around. I get that. The problem is we obviously didn't know that there was a deficit at the electric department. So now the shell game, fell apart. So look, the fact that was going on, I don't have a problem with. But the fact that it got to the point where we were still moving money around, there was no money, now that's a problem.
They continued once the horse was down on the ground, right?
Yeah, well, running free
or
through
running
the fields.
free wherever, But they continued even after they knew there was a problem. They knew there was this deficit out there. They continued to prime the pump, if you will.
That's the reporting says that.
Well, Alvin, you have a city manager, right?
Well, yes.
I mean, I can understand the mayor and the aldermen, part-time people, not really paying attention to this. But when you have a city manager, isn't it his or her job to...
Yeah, well, Russ Hawes, who is no longer there, and he was one of the ones that retired but was fired. That was another part of this whole story. But yeah, technically, that's why you have a city manager, and that's why I think the city of St. Louis needs a city manager, quite frankly. Now, maybe this one...
Didn't work out.
Didn't work, but yeah. But, I think it's still a good philosophy, But at the same time, originally, and this gentleman named Mark Petty, who was also retired but was fired, who ran the electric department, those trade winds are starting to kind of change a little bit and say, like, you know what, this really wasn't this guy's fault because of this moving of the money around and all that. It wasn't like he was just shelling it out, you know.
Let me ask you this, because we're going to go to letters in just a moment.
Sorry.
But is this the talk of Kirkwood, or is this just the talk in the media?
This is talk of Kirkwood. This is people got issues, and it showed in the last municipal election that some people were not reelected, some people decided not to run. We'll see where it goes the next, round of elections, but people really aren't happy, because we see our utility bill.
But was this about keeping utility bills low in some weird way? It seems like it was.
But just me speaking, I don't think so. I think just some things were missed, and it became to the calamitous stage before people recognized it.
And didn't they build an arts center?
Yeah.
Yes, but
wait,
the Arts Center pays for it itself. It's part of the debt service, but leave K-PAC alone. It's a nice place and it pays for itself.
I love that art center.
Oh, it's
How
beautiful.
did it pay for itself when it got built?
It's absolutely
Did they
beautiful.
take money from the electric department?
No, not to build it. I think it goes toward the debt service.
And you can
I
walk
could be
to
wrong.
Guys and
Well, now
Dolls. It's a
developers
great
getting some
amenity.
tax
Okay,
breaks.
we're out of time.
No.
To be continued. Let's go to the old mailbag and see what the viewers had to say about last week's show. Sarah Fensky is right. In more affluent neighborhoods, the majority of students start school ready to learn. This in turn brings about the high test scores that people think make schools great. That from Jackie Eifert of St. Louis. We also heard from Kevin Walters of St. Charles, who says, regarding Walmart drone delivery, Bill McClellan said people in St. Charles said it seems like a nice idea. I don't recall Mayor Dan Borgmeyer or my councilman asking me or any of my neighbors our opinions. Thank you, Kevin. You can write us care of 9PBS 63108. Don't forget those emails, donnybrook@9pbs.org. On social media, use hashtag DonnybrookSTL. And wherever you are, maybe in Canada like Joe was a couple weeks ago, listen to us on your favorite podcast source. We have a program on the Donnybrook YouTube channel. It's called Last Call, where we discuss the topics we couldn't get to in the first 30 or so minutes. This week, we're going to talk about the League of Women Voters getting kicked out of the Thomas Eagleton Federal Office Building. How would Senator Eagleton feel about that? Well, we'll discuss it on Last Call, and we hope you join us. That's it for this session. See you next time.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
What?
I'm not up to the